Hello and welcome to Who Corner to Corner podcast. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Jeff, and if you're a regular listener to the podcast, I'm sure you know that by now. And I'm joined, as always, by my other host, Mr. Paul.
Yes, hello, that is me.
And Paul, once again, we're not alone tonight, are we?
No, we are not alone. We do have good company, Jeff.
We do. So tonight we're joined by Steve Cole, who is a name that many of you might recognise from many a Doctor Who book, among many other things that he's written as well. Yeah. Good evening, Steve.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. Yeah.
Good.
Not so bad. Ready to peer back into the distant past.
Yes,
the mists of time.
Mists of time. No, I didn't publish that one. Whatever that one. That wasn't.
No, somebody else. Yeah. Some other hack who did that one.
So we've got quite a few questions here tonight, Steve, that talk about you and your work and Doctor Who as well. But I'd like to go back in time. And the first question is, what started your love of reading?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Love of Doctor Who, is that, huh? Ah. Well, it's one of those things that's always been in my life. You know, my first memory is Sarah Jane caught in the triangular vent from Ark in Space.
Oh.
So I can sort of trace that back to around February 1975. You might be saying, but Steve, how do you know it wasn't the repeat shown later in the year, 1975? And it possibly could be, in which case my first memory would be Tom Baker jumping on the bed from episode 1 of Revenge of the Cybermen. No, tell a lie, it's the Dalek firing at the time ring from Genesis Part 6. So I was basically watching and loving it right from the start. And then when I started learning to read, when I was 5, I started getting the Target books. And I know I was 5 because my mum has filled in the coupon to join the Target Club at the back of my copy of Doctor Who and the Cybermen by Jerry Davis. And my age is given as 5 3/4. So there you go. And I'd been collecting for a little while then. I remember having to prove to her that I could read it by reading the first page. Because it was 40p. This was not, this was not a cheap...
Yeah, I remember those days.
Exactly, it wasn't a cheap thing. Standing in I think it was Braggin's, this sort of department store we had in Bedford, and reading The Origin of the Cybermen or whatever it was. So I remember that to this day. There was a lot riding on it. My performance was important. Luckily, even though I couldn't read half the words, my mum didn't understand science fiction anyway, so I just made up a word and she accepted it. So that was fair enough. I got away with it. I got my Revenge of the Cybermen, and onwards and upwards since then.
Brilliant.
So it was actually the Doctor Who Target novels that kind of led you into reading at an early age?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my reading habits were basically Doctor Who, Spider-Man comics, and Charlie Brown cartoons. I mean, it was those three really sort of dominated my reading as a child. I felt it was fairly well balanced, because Doctor Who always won. Charlie Brown always lost, and while Spider-Man won the battles, Peter Parker was always losing the war. So you had all you needed was there really. I mean
that's it. You've got the whole human condition.
Exactly, it's right there. It's right there. You've got, and it's interesting. Those were my heroes. The Peanuts gang and the Doctor and Spidey, but also relating much more to Peter Parker. So it was. It's interesting that was how it kind of pushed me through prepubescence into my teen years. I mean, I was 8 years old when Terence Dix came to Bedford Central Library and was talking about Doctor Who. That was a big day because Bedford Central Library had a computer that day in 1979.
What?
With a Doctor Who quiz on it.
Town!
Yeah.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
I remember, it was multiple choice questions. It was one of them was what style of dress does the Fourth Doctor have? And I had no idea. I think Bohemian was an option. I didn't know what Bohemian meant. I just liked the word the most, so I sort of clicked on it. And in the end, my score was high. I got very good. You are a Doctor Who expert. I was like, yes! yes,
My life is
my
complete.
life is
I'm
complete.
vindicated now.
And those wonderful, wonderful days when you're not at all self-conscious about
Yeah.
this, and you're running around saying, "Mom, Dad, I'm a Doctor Who expert. It's brilliant, isn't it?" Rather than a few years later trying very hard to keep quiet about it for fear of being laughed at in the playground. But it was
We all go through those phases.
Yeah.
Early days, yes, it's brilliant. Teenage, late teens, angsty teens, early 20s, whatever, Doctor Who.
Yeah, exactly.
And then later on in life, it's cool. You kind of accept it and realise that's who you are and what you will always be.
What you will always be, indeed, yes. When Terence Dicks came back to Bedford Library, I was I think 13, and not an awful lot changed between the ages of 8 and 13. I still wanted to be Terence Dicks. I still wanted to do his job, and I still carried on reading the books, even at university. I think the last of Terence's books, The Space Pirates, I remember getting that from the university bookshop. So things didn't really kind of, things have never changed for me, really, in that regard, anyway.
It's sorry, Paul, what were you going to say?
No, it just reminded me, though, what Steve was saying of an encounter I had in W.H. Smith's in Putney years and years ago. I was in sixth form and I was hoovering up some of the last of the Target Rangers. They were drawing to a close, and I remember buying that. And the woman at the till, she kind of looked at it, and she looked at me, and I was like 18, 19, something like that. And she goes, "Doctor Who books?" I went, "Yeah. I've always been interested in them, always read them. I've got the whole collection. I've got all of them now, And she said, "Yeah. And they a little bit for kids, though." And I said, "Look, I'm still going to be buying these when I'm 40, when I'm in my 50s." And the weird thing is, I still am, and I love that.
You were right.
My prophecy was made true.
You need to hunt her down and show her. Yeah. Just say, "See,
look at that.
I wasn't making it up. It's true."
Yeah.
That's the kind of guy that I am. Yeah.
Well, you're in good company.
I was going to say, Steve, quite interesting what you said about Spider-Man there and relating more to Peter Parker, and I think that's partly why Spidey is arguably the world's most popular superhero, because we can relate to Peter. We've all had no money, or lost a girlfriend, been late for the job, got sacked, all that kind of stuff, and that's part of what makes him.
And the fact that everyone thought was a coward, and he was running away just to change into Spider-Man and save them. That was the injustice of it that really burned. But I used to feel so
they had no idea. Yeah,
no, it was terrible. Well,
it's the eternal tragedy of the superhero.
It is. I mean, speaking of tragedy, I mean, I was looking the other day. I used to get Super Spider-Man with the superheroes every week back in 1976, and obviously onwards in various iterations. My mum would always make me throw out my comics after a while because I didn't have a very big bedroom, and but there were two that I held on to, and those two were the Gwen Stacy is murdered by the Green Goblin from 1976. I was 5 years old when I read these comics. And
that
my
was
mum,
a shocker, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. My mum
quite traumatising.
Yeah, my mum was just thinking, it's just people in fancy underwear having fights, But if you read over that, there's Harry Osborn tripping out on LSD. There's Peter turning his back on him. It's this massive revenge tragedy, violent and raw. And Jerry Conway, who wrote it, it's a remarkable couple of episodes. And I knew that there was something so special about the writing of them. It was a lot of emotions I didn't understand, but I understood that their importance. And they kind of informed the character of Spider-Man thereon, because although, obviously in America, they were getting one title a month, obviously we were getting them over the weeks, and, Peter Parker's grief, continued over the following many episodes, and there was that. It was stuff, your life can change and people can be taken away. That was quite an early lesson for that. And so I guess at least it kind of slightly prepared me for when Sarah Jane stayed behind at the end of Fear. I realised that people could get ripped away from you, and that was it. At least Sarah was okay and had a stuffed toy for company, so I knew that she was going to be all right.
She was going to be all right. Yeah. So, Steve, what specifically led you to want to write? Obviously, you were a big reader, but was there something, a moment specifically that you thought, I can do this, or I want to give it a go?
Well, I used to, write my own Doctor Who stories, in pencil and paper. I've still got a lot of them.
Oh, really?
They're great, let me tell you. Doctor Who and the Mitex Power.
Yes.
Doctor Who
Publish it now.
and the Auton Attack. Yeah, all these greats. But I And I used to kind of draw book covers with my name on, but I never really thought that I would be a writer. It wasn't something that, anyone ever mentioned as being a possible job career. So, in fact, I kind of went into editing. I started off editing children's magazines at the BBC, and I was group editor of preschool titles in 1996 when the Paul McGann TV movie came back. And
oh, yes.
I'd written some little pop-up poem books for kids around then, because I was writing stuff for the magazines that I was editing, like Noddy and Pingu and Playdate. But upstairs in BBC Books, which were doing obviously the book versions of these characters, my counterpart was a lady called Nuala Buffini, and she mentioned one day over lunch that BBC Books were taking back the Doctor Who rights from Virgin. Right. And I'd been playing it cool, as we were saying earlier.
Yeah.
I was like, Tom Baker, isn't he the fourth Doctor Who? Is that right?
yeah, playing down the fan.
Yeah, because I quite like Nuala. She was. Yeah. I didn't want her thinking the worst of me. But and gradually,
well, you preferred Tom Baker over Peter Davison. That's
but I was playing very dumb, but she asked me if I would help with the slush pile, because they were being inundated with it. Everyone who'd had their Virgin book turned down had sent it to the BBC books without revision, so there was a lot of stuff to wade through. And then I sort of found out that Nuala was, she was being overwhelmed by the sheer volume of Doctor Who stuff, and they would be advertising the job. So I had to kind of come clean in the end and say, I actually know a bit more about this than I've let on. And the full horror came out. But the thing was, in magazines, I was, to the outside world, I was doing well. I was on the senior executive grade, and I was, managing a team of 12. And here I was wanting to take a pay cut and a grade cut to go and work on Doctor Who. And while I argued, it's a career sidestep. I understand that. I've got less experience in this media. It's a good opportunity to get experience in books and video and audio. I mean, these could be invaluable skills that will sort of like tie me along. Whereas inside, I'm going, it's Doctor Who, for heaven's sake, it's Doctor Who, because I'm going to do it.
Your soul is screaming. That's
right.
Give me the job.
That's right. I had to do, had to test. I had to read the synopsis of, or the pitch of one of the books, and say whether I would accept it or reject it, and give reasons why. And so I got, the synopsis, and I turned it down with a very considered and hopefully conciliatory letter with it. And they said, well done. By the way, that book you turned down is coming out in May, or whatever it was. So I never got back to that author and told them that I'd already rejected my work cruelly, and now had to edit it. But so this is a roundabout way of saying that it was happenstance that led to me falling into the writing, because I had to do obviously some writing as well, not just the copy, but I would have to as well as editing, I would have to come and rewrite sections or bits that I wanted to carry forward over sort of set up arcs and things. Some authors needed more rewriting than others, but it was a skill set you had to learn, really. So and also it's that old Barry Letts thing, sort of don't ask people to do stuff you're not prepared to do yourself. So I felt that I had to kind of get involved, and by that point I'd had a few more children's books published, so this was a very different experience. It was obviously writing for Doctor Who was one of the ways that I started off. I wrote quite a lot of TV and film tie-ins back in the start of my career, before writing more of my original fiction. But so Doctor Who was a really good learning ground for me, not just in editing, which I would go on to do as for Lady Bird and for Simon and Schuster later on, working on the fiction list there. But obviously it was great to be helping push Doctor Who through uncharted waters, and working with Terence Dicks. I could have said to him, "Hey, Tezza, when I saw you at the library those times, little did we realise that we'd be working together on Doctor Who, the only prison where you get time on for good behaviour, just as he said.
That must have been quite a moment then. So just going back to the start of those Eighth Doctor Adventure novels then. So obviously the Virgin New Adventures had been quite popular among the fan base, and Virgin must have been thinking, yeah, we're onto a good one here, and then lo and behold, along comes the evil corporation to take it all back as soon as it looks like it's going to be over in the US and everything else. Sorry, that's a very cynical way to look at it. That wasn't really where I was going with this. But
no, it's fine. It's an interesting one though, because people have often portrayed the BBC as sort of a bad guy coming along and sort of taking back the license. Obviously, it was a business decision because Doctor Who was coming back on telly, and it's one of the few. I think it's one of only two properties that the BBC owns outright, the other being Top Gear. And so to have full control over Doctor Who in books and video and audio, and being able to provide a unified look across the range was sound business practice to make Doctor Who a stronger presence in the market. So there was never any case that Virgin had messed up, or it was like, well, let Virgin carry it through the wilderness years and snatch it back at the last minute. I mean, there wasn't that level of competence, or forward planning to make that happen. It was purely that this was back. It would be considered a great property for children, and so it would operate out of children's books. Obviously, the books we did were not children's books. We ended up taking. Newland decided that we would basically just inherit the same range that Virgin had put up. And I think that was the bit that bothered me. That was the bit that I felt was unfair, because I felt we should have gone in doing something totally different, or maybe a little series of shorter books or linked books or a variety of different things. I didn't think that we should have just picked up a Missing Doctor a month and an Eighth Doctor book a month. I didn't feel that was really the thing to do, especially as I was the only person working on.
It's a lot of reading.
It's a lot of reading, a lot of editing. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, Virgin had they had Bex, they had Simon, they had Peter, all working as a team on each title, and I had me, and eventually, when I begged, I had one freelance assistant. One day a fortnight originally. That was my help, and I was doing all the videos, and I was doing all the audios as well.
Oh my goodness!
So it was a fairly intense level of work. And people said to me, you'll be like a child in a sweet shop. You'll have Doctor Who the whole time. Of course, if you glut on anything, you end up feeling a little bit. Yeah, you get a little bit sick. But yes, I think before I started, we sidetracked onto the cynical Virgin territory. You were about to mention Terence Dicks and how that was indeed. At the beginning of the
exactly that. So I mean, I'm guessing that all those titles in the early days, you commissioned all of them. There weren't any that had already been pre-commissioned. You built the whole range up from scratch.
No. Nuala had been busy. She had got. This is what I mean. This is why. When I came into it, I regretted not being...
So the wheels were already turning.
Yeah, exactly. And we had the first book I commissioned was Alien Bodies by Lawrence Miles, which was November's book. And
I remember, I'm going to talk to you about that one in a second. don't let me forget.
I won't. Who could forget Alien Bodies? And and the thing was, Paul McGann had only been the Doctor for one story, and unlike Sylvester McCoy's Doctor, where it had been the direction it was moving in was clear from season 26, and by having the likes of Andrew Cartmel scripting and Ben Aronovich, you had people who were continuing a plan. When McGann came along, it was very different, and I think everyone had different views. All the writers had different views of which bits to push. There were some saying, let's never ever mention that he's half human again, and other people are saying, this is amazing, he's half human, we need to make more of this.
Get rid of that.
Mind that.
That's right.
And 20 novels out.
And someone will say, Sam you've got a schoolgirl as a companion, you're not happy with her, and other people say, no, Sam's great, you can push her in this way. And say, no, let's kill off Sam and do that. So there was trying to get everyone pulling in the right direction was quite tricky, especially as those books had been commissioned, and I could only really react to the manuscript coming in. And because we were doing two 80,000 word novels every month, apart from December, That's like 22 a year. It means
That's a lot.
It means you're not really left with a lot of freedom to change too much. You kind of like you have to have the next 2 titles out. I used to think, God, what if I just went and sat in the toilet and never came out again? It's like people would probably people probably wouldn't notice until they suddenly say, "Hang on, shouldn't we have had another 4 Doctor Who books out by now?"
He's been in there for 2 months.
Yeah, exactly. What's going on?
I'm reading the slush.
That's right. It must be a really long one. Yeah, that was the thing. So yeah, there was a lot going on, but and I don't think I would have started the range with the 8 Doctors. I mean, much as I love Terrence, I didn't feel it was the right message we should have been sending out, but especially when tonally it was so different from what followed. Vampire Science comes out the very next month, and it's like an entirely different thing. So, but there was no way to smooth that over.
You can kind of see why in some ways. I mean, I kind of saw it as Terrence Dick's obviously quite a really popular, well-known author, certainly with the fan base.
Absolutely.
Comes along, writes the first novel, it's going to drive some numbers, isn't it? But I was really... I remember reading it because I'd kind of fallen out of favour with the Virgin New Adventures. I devoured the early releases, the early titles, and then sort of just kind of just left it, and I never got up to Lungbarrow or any of those later ones, Dying Days, and I wish I had now because they'd be worth a fortune. But so when the 8th Doctor, the BBC books came along, I thought, okay, it's kind of a reset, and I remember picking up.
It's a new jumping on point.
Yeah, that's it. And I started reading. I thought, okay, so straight away within the first page, we've ditched the TV movie completely. We're away from that gorgeous set. We're back in the white panelled console room of familiar territory, and it's kind of a rehash of all Terrence Dicks's favourites and some of his own stuff in there as well. And I thought, okay, we'll go with it. I enjoyed it. It was all right, but it was a kind of a best bits of. But yeah, you're right. Along comes Vampire Science, and we're almost back into the sort of style of the Virgin New Adventures.
Exactly.
Coming on from there.
And I think if the TV movie had developed into a series, then the books would have been shorter and younger, and much as the Target books were, to catch, because the whole point of it was to catch the wave of children who'd be brought to it, because Doctor Who needed to expand its range, and I think Virgin, even at the time, Virgin was saying that if we had to have the license taken back, this was probably the best time, because numbers had been
timing was good.
Numbers had been dwindling, and they. Although there was a big spike with 8 Doctors, I think maybe because people perceived it as being more like the Virgin books, right down to using the same authors, that it changed in look but not in substance. And I always wish that there had been, we could have surprised people and come in with a really cool and big idea that would have played out. Just needed a bit more planning and a bit more rather than the fans love old monsters, let's give them old monsters, which I think was kind of slightly the feeling at the time. But as I say, it was no offence to Terrence. I think Terrence did Terrence is Terrence. He was slightly late delivering. It was not edited under ideal circumstances. They were still setting up my desk. I had two computers, neither of which worked. I used to have this really annoying IT guy who would just sort of come in and just say, "Adjust your cable, sir," because he knew that my screen was meant to be colour, it was black and white, and he'd fiddle with the cable, and it would all flicker and sparkle, and say, "What are you doing?" It's like, don't make fun of me while I'm sort of sat here trying to. It's like, you've given me this crap, I'm trying to make the best of it.
I'm just still getting over the fact you had an IT guy who called you sir. I mean, I've never known that in all my days.
It was a sarcastic sir. It wasn't a real.
That's all right.
Yeah, a condescending one.
That's right.
So. Am I correct in thinking then that you discovered Lawrence Miles with Alien Bodies?
No, I didn't discover him. He'd already done Christmas on a Rational Planet for Virgin.
Of course he had. See, I hadn't read that. I'd fallen out.
You'd fallen out by then. That's right. No, I had as well. I was when I loved the synopsis, and when it came in, I was thinking, this is the stuff. Lawrence was really good at high concept stuff that was kind of written with this kind of intellectual relish. It was kind of like a slightly kind of coldly clever intelligence behind all he does.
I thought it was an astonishing novel, honestly.
Yeah.
I remember reading that thinking, this now the whole range seems to be turning in a different direction. It's like a real turn left moment. You know, we'd had a few titles and they're kind of, you know, they're good, they're okay, they're readable, they're what you'd expect. Along comes Alien Body, it's like, oh my God, you know, this is something else. The prose style, the story itself is really something. The prose style is elevated, and it's one of those you either love or you hate. I think you either get on with it or you don't.
And the structure as with the interludes, you know, it's all very cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, it felt like something I'd be reading at university. Like you said, that high concept, intellectualized kind of thing. But at the time, I loved all that. So,
it was a very cool book.
Fun.
I felt that, you know, this was what I wanted to be doing, this sort of thing. So it was just, you know, it was tricky to get everything you wanted when you're having to put out so much so quickly without much time to think. Because, you know, I did the job, you know, during the day, but there wasn't time for any of the actual editing. And considering the job was meant to be the editing, that was what made it difficult. You know, you'd only really have enough time to just barely keep things ticking over, and then you'd be reading. I developed quite a good facility for editing while drunk on the tube. You know, sort of like going in and meeting a friend, and then sort of like coming back late at night. I'd be thinking, oh my God, what. I was in a real state last night. Then I found out that actually looking back, I was saying, "Oh, actually, that's a pretty good edit." So it was all right. So that was something, I guess. But you know, I made so many good friends through it. So many people that I'm friends with today, and also still in touch. We're still working with some of them, which is really nice. Obviously, I never expected to come back as the BBC Books range consultant, but. The universe works in mysterious ways.
Yeah,
it certainly does. That's for sure. So you so you did that job for, was it 2 years?
Yeah, about 2 years. I think I surrendered the Missing Adventures first to Justin Richards, so I could focus on the 8th, and then we had the handover to Justin when Peter Angelides and I wrote the Ancestor Cell, and Justin was writing the Burning. So. Yeah. Obviously, I edited The Burning for him after he edited The Ancestor Cell for me. But, you know, Justin and I have always been really good mates, and you know, and have worked together, written together, commissioned each other. So it was there was no one else I could really think. If Justin had said no, I would probably still have stayed with it, because it needed someone who had the the skill set to be able to do it, and the broadness of approach to embrace different approaches and styles and genres, just like Doctor Who always has. So, at least I knew that I was leaving it in safe hands, and that it would keep going.
So it was probably your Terrance Sticks handing over to Robert Holmes type moment.
It was exactly that. It was much like that.
Only a fan would understand.
Yes, that's sad but true. But yes, neither of us smoked a pipe. But apart from that, the analogy holds beautifully true.
So how did after the TV movie, and then you were doing the books, and then you kind of stepped away from that role. What did you do next between then and the show coming back in 2005, and how did you get back involved with things then?
Well, I didn't, say goodbye to the list entirely. I stayed on. Actually, I was still doing the typesetting for each book, because that was, a part of it, and I'd proofread them quite often or copy edit them. Basically, trying to help out Justin, because it always needed turning around so quickly. So if I could, do a couple of books a month, that was I was happy doing that, and it meant that I was able to sort of like keep an eye on things. Every now and then I'd have to write one for Justin as well, which was perfectly nice. But basically I started off. Doctor Who didn't really belong in the children's department, because we weren't making children's books, and because it wasn't coming back, everyone was slightly embarrassed about it. So I found the Doctor Who list was sort of shunted around quite a lot. We were sent off to the SMEG area, which was a sports, motoring and entertainment group,
Do you think they planned that?
Because in Smeg they also had Red Dwarf, and that was the only other science fiction, science fiction the BBC had. So they thought, well, yeah, we'll stick him in with that. So I was in sports, motoring, and entertainment, and so the publisher
in with the Smegheads.
That's right, but also with the Top Kit lot as well, because the producer Stuart Snaith he was always mildly intrigued / nonplussed by Doctor Who being on his bottom line, but he was a good chap. But then they moved out of there as well because they didn't want it either. And we actually, for a time, we worked out a factual, if you can believe that.
Right.
I said, you realise this is about, a 900-year-old Time Lord with two hearts, or like travelling around time and space in a police box. It's not really that factual.
Well, I suppose a police box was real, wasn't it?
That bit was real. And it was made by the BBC. Maybe that bit was
claim
real.
It as factual.
Yeah. So it was. I left them to it. Really, and I stayed doing children's tie-ins at the BBC, and then I jumped ship to work for Ladybird, but I carried on a freelance basis really. Then I jacked in Ladybird and became a freelance writer editor, and so Justin would offer me bits and pieces, and obviously then I heard that it was coming back because I'd had experience of steering the range, and Jack Rayner had experience of working with me and Justin on steering the range. Justin brought the two of us in to write the first 3 novels for the new series, because they knew that we were safe to trust and not blabber about the place, because we had form in that area. It was very exciting. I remember the first time I went down to meet Russell was the day the first rushes came in. So we were with Russell when he was watching the Space Pig. Come into sight with Eccleston saying hello to it, and thinking, that's pretty doctorish. And then
that must have been exciting. Could you not quite believe that it, well, like everyone really, but that it was back and that you were getting to be involved in it in those early stages?
No, it was absolutely extraordinary, And what was lovely as well was that Russell wanted the tie-ins to be absolutely the best they could be, and to give them access to everything. So I remember him saying, we're not doing an alien planet in the first season because we don't want all the jokes about quarries and all the rest. So would you like to take Rose to her first alien planet in your book? And I was like, yeah, go on then. And I was asked if I would use...
I'll do that.
Yeah, exactly. And he was asked if I'd
I'll
use the
take that hit,
Slovene. Yeah, exactly. It was like, oh, are you kidding me? Of course. And they gave us the scripts, and they showed us rough cuts of the episodes as they came in. I still have memories of watching these early rough cuts of Rose with
Slovene,
with Republica playing Ready to Go over the scenes of the Doctor and Rose racing to the London Eye, and with different effects there. And actually they had a kind of a weird version of the Tom Baker title sequence topping and tailing them, because the new sequence hadn't been finished yet. So they were very much works in progress. Yeah. But it was very exciting seeing the first new Doctor Who of the 21st century being in the
privileged position.
Yeah, but then when I found out in the script for Boomtown that Russell had referenced the alien planet from The Monsters Inside, my Eccleston book, I couldn't quite believe it. And it was kind of weird that Rose calls it Justicia, and I'd always called it Justicia, and I thought I've been corrected on how to say my own alien planet by a fictional character, because now it is Justicia because Rose says so, and I thought
it's canon now.
There's only Doctor Who in which this could ever happen. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. That you can be corrected by Rose herself on how to say a planet you made up. I mean, I love that.
I didn't know there was that reference to one of the books, because I always thought that the books were never sort of referenced in the show at all. But then there was one reference in series 2, season 2, where Ten and Rose mentioned going to Rome or something, which I thought was a reference to the Stone Rose. Do you remember that one?
Oh, right.
Could have been, or it could have been a reference to the Romans.
It could just been something random. But I was like, ooh. That's interesting.
But actually, Monsters Inside was because I invented the Blatherine for that as well, and the Blatherine ended up turning up in the Sarah Jane Adventures.
They did.
mainly because Gary Russell thought that Russell had invented the blathering. So
it's how these things are, maybe.
That's right. So, and my contract there was nothing. I had no rights in anything anyway.
Yeah.
But it was quite fun. I think that book to have been the planet mentioned by Rose, and for the blathering to turn up in the Doctor Who spin-off makes Monsters Inside the most canonical of all the novels ever. Just by odd happenstance. So it's that wonderful universe.
You can argue that the others are not canon, but if you want to, but you can't argue that.
No one can tell me. That's right. No one can tell me. Rose,
no one can deny
Rose
that.
She says it's all very well going to Justicia or somewhere else, but I think that's my planet. That's pretty.
Yeah, cool. Brilliant.
That's quite interesting. To be honest, that's the only one of those 3 books that I've read.
Well, I'll be.
That's it. I bought the 3 of them. I read yours, and I didn't bother reading the others. Not for any reason.
I put you off. Not
that it turned me off them or anything like that.
That's a great advert, isn't it, for the book?
Well done, Paul. Yeah, I remember reading.
You want me to put my foot in it? I'll do it. No problem.
Yeah, I've read loads of those new ones, and getting. We'll come back to them in a minute, but it's a bit of a shame that there hasn't been any more in the last couple of years. After the first 3 with Jodie's Doctor.
Yes.
Combat Magics was great, and that whole trio was brilliant. You read one, didn't you, Paul? You read the Good Doctor.
Yes.
We looked at that. We were going to discuss it on a podcast episode. Yeah, Juno's one, but we
Juno
never...
Dawson.
Yes.
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
So it was. They were really good. So
like
and Combat Magics was great, and.
Thank you. Yeah, it was an interesting one doing those 3 because it was a very stark difference from how the very first ones had gone, because back with Eccleston we were given obviously access to all the scripts and all the footage, and we actually had the proper TV script editors working with us on our titles. So I had Helen Rayner was editing it for the BBC for me. To make sure that it was, in line with what they wanted to do, and Elwyn, the other script editor, was working on a couple of the others, I think. And when we came to do Combat Magics and Molten Heart with Una McCormack and Juno's Good Doctor, we were given most of one script. And absolutely nothing else. So,
really?
Oh wow!
So we were given like a crib sheet of telling us how the characters would behave with each other, but we weren't given the chance to see how that would work. So we were essentially all pitching our characterization slightly differently, and I was editing them, and I could see, Una's making her a bit more northern, or Juno's doing this with her, and all the characters were just slightly different. So we were able to smooth them out at the edit stage. Gabby, working there on approvals, was there to help with that. But it was interesting times. I think it would be more reassuring to actually have more to go on. But I think we did an all right job.
Yeah, definitely. Do you know, and Paul and I, because I reread The Good Doctor, and you read it for your first time, didn't you? And I said, actually, looking at it now, and I should go back and read the others and see, but it felt very Chibnall-like in its themes and its styles, didn't it, Paul? And actually we really felt like we could have seen this one on screen.
Yeah, it really
with
had
the
that
topic,
sense of
and so I think you said you think you kind of got it all quite well. Yeah, I think they did work, bearing in mind how little you had to go off for them.
Yeah.
So what do you think was the reason for that? Secrecy, or just not?
Yeah, very
stuff
much so. Very much
Really?
so. It was really just not wanting to have too many spoilers, which has been kind of a hallmark of the Chibnall era, I suppose.
Yeah, well, must say, both of us have, and many others that we know have really liked that. And remember in series 11, they put out little synopsis for the first 4 or 5 episodes, and then we got to week 5, and I thought, I have no idea what's coming next week. How exciting!
It is always nice when you don't know, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and
definitely.
the secrets that they've managed to keep has been brilliant. So yeah,
that's right.
Some people
it's
don't like it,
good.
and
I mean, I think it's a fine line to cross, because fine line to balance, shall we say? Because you either give away too much and you've spoiled all your best bits, or you might sometimes lose some of the word of mouth that could have boosted it and made sure it was kind of seen more. But for licensees anyway, it was slightly, it wasn't tricky as such, but it was. I remember rather than when we were asked to pitch stories for it, we weren't told what might conflict. We were asked to generate more stories than we needed, so they could then tell us if there was a problem with those. So Juno had the idea for The Good Doctor and another story. I put together 3 or 4 stories, and we chose Combat Magics and Molten Heart, which Una picked up and ran with. So it was, but yeah, there was. We were told specifically that from now on, Doctor Who would not be, flaunting its wares in public.
Right.
And they were travelling to overseas so they could film away from the more organised fandom. And you can see extras are right down that season as well. It's like it's really a show being with the bare minimum of characters on screen. A lot of those stories are actually fairly small casts. Yeah, because I think they're that worried about the secrets getting out. So it was an interesting way of doing it, and it coincided with me coming back to the range after Justin decided that he was going to take some time out, and with shocking originality, they came to me. I took over from it. So really, I passed him the baton. He held on to it for well over a decade, and then sort of like passed it back again. 15 years probably. So yeah, that was quite a nice continuity, and nice to be joining at the start of a new era. And it was just nice having different approaches, different ways of doing it, and we kind of moved from doing the more straightforward like sets of adventures to doing more event books, like we did the Sophie Aldred book, which was a different way of combining.
We'll talk about that
the
in
classic
a bit.
series.
So there was Star Tales as well, wasn't there? Was that what it was
Star
called?
Tales, yes, that's right.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Short
that one.
Stories. Yeah, I enjoyed writing one of those, the Houdini one. And of course, she has a couple of stories in the Target storybook as well. And of course, Joy Wilkinson did a beautiful job novelising The Witchfinders. Yes,
that was brilliant. Yeah.
So that was.
There's been a lot of really good stuff for this era. Just it felt like the others had more, but when you step back and look at it, like you're saying, you had the event books. It probably was an equivalent amount, really. Just everyone loves those, the little hardbacked. Ones
exactly.
that they were doing.
I think though the trouble is that when you do the same thing for every time a Doctor comes along, there reaches a point where you want to do something a bit different.
That happened with 12, didn't it? Where you did the Glamour Chronicles series. I remember people saying, "Oh, which one do you need to read first out of those 3?" And then they did the audios, which were the Winter series, and then there was the Lost series as well, Lost Angel, Lost Planet, and stuff like that. And they all kind of stood alone but connected as well, which was quite fun.
And that was just before I came along. So I was glad that they were just trying it out in different areas, different directions. And there was that lovely Master story collection we did as well to coincide with Spyfall. So it was. And of course, doing Scratchman with Tom Baker was
How was that?
That was great fun. I mean, an example of how you can have the best day of your life and the worst day of your life simultaneously was when I went down with Albert Di Petrillo, the publishing director, and James Goss, who was going to be working with Tom on the manuscript. We went down to Tom's preferred pub in Rye. And we're all sitting there.
He's not too far from me. I'm in Horsham. He's he's not a million miles away.
Yeah, no, not at all. And we were all sitting there thinking, "Oh my God, I feel so nervous." And then you hear this booming voice saying, "Have they arrived already?" And you're going, "Oh, Tom's here already." And of course he comes in, he holds court, and he's magnificent, and we're all so excited. We're like little schoolboys giggling in the great man's stories, And then we say goodbye to Tom after working out approaches and timings and how we'll deal with it. And Albert and James and I decide to go off to a restaurant as we're there and order some oysters. It was my first time with oysters. Either I have a serious oyster allergy, or there was something not very good with these oysters. But I was flying off to Scotland that afternoon, later that afternoon.
No.
Yeah, because I was doing some events for my children's books. But I started in the lounge beforehand. The stomach gripes started. It was like, uh-oh. And then things just got seriously worse and worse. And I was like, I was so unwell on the plane, and the air crew were like giving me cold flannels and sick bags. And I was thinking, how did this happen? I was having the best time of my life.
Yeah.
Just before lunch with Tom Baker, a private audience with. And I was being, exactly, I remembered he was Bohemian. He still looked Bohemian with his
That is the universe unfairly kicking you in the butt.
Yeah, it's like he's had far too much fun. We have to go and stop him.
Yeah,
that's karma.
Yeah. Why should he be allowed to have fun with Tom Baker? Never stop that.
Exactly,
Cruel.
Put that to a stop. Yeah.
That's right. And you know what?
It might be on a plane in a minute.
And as I was on the plane going to Stirling, I was thinking about the oyster, and I just kept thinking about that giant clam in Genesis of the Daleks that Harry gets his foot stuck in. I was thinking, it's that bloody thing come to get me.
That's what it is.
It's the spirit of that. Tom conjured it somehow. I swear it was him.
Mutant clam
the
beast.
Mutant clam beast. That's right, and it got me. It got me big time. Oh my God.
Got you. So, Steve, I want to go back again a little bit, and one of the questions we had was, how did books like Feast of the Drowned and Sting of the Zygons come about, and how did you kind of get back involved in the range in those? You spoke about with Eccleston, but did you pitch all those ideas, or did they have stuff that they said, this is what we're thinking? How did it work with all of them?
The way it would work would be Justin would normally say, we'll have a past, a present, and a future story, which was pretty much laid out in Russell's first series, and you can see similar. The pattern repeats. Later on, you might start off in the present day, and then you'll have a past story, and then you'll have a future story.
They did it in almost every series, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right.
Right from the very start of it in 1963, David Whittaker, he did exactly the same thing, didn't he?
Well, this is it. It's a way of showing your format, your unique format. So it all makes sense. So I guess I remember being asked if I would do a second one for Eccleston, but I was too busy, so I couldn't. Yeah. But then the idea of writing one for the Tennant Doctor, and again it was wonderful because we got to go along and watch Christmas Invasion with half the effects scenes missing, and then watch New Earth and Tooth and Claw, which was very exciting. All in one day in Cardiff.
Wow.
But I think I just I pitched a story, and it was quite a miserable story. I think it was Feast of the Drowned actually started off being set in World War II, and it was basically we've told so many stories about the Blitz and how it was for Britain in the Second World War, but we kind of forget about the British bombing raids on Germany, and so I was trying to find out something about whether they had an evacuees program or what was happening in Germany at that time, and maybe it would be good to tell a story from that point of view rather than always from the British point of view. But I think it ended up being so somber. I think Helen Vane said, "This is miserable. We need a Doctor Who is about sort of a fun and exciting journey as well as the dark stuff." And I think Russell said something like, "Oh, let's make it a secret base underneath the Thames." And so I duly made it a secret base underneath the Thames, and I guess he probably thought it's such fun having secret bases under the Thames. We'll do it in Runaway Bride as well. So,
and he was actually right.
It was great. So you would get. I mean, I just loved the fact that you would get feedback from the people working on the show to help you make your book the best it could be. So they gave you the scripts. They gave you. I think the script for School Reunion was outstanding, and reading that approach. I mean, I'd watched Casanova with Tennant and thought, even watching that, this guy would be a brilliant Doctor Who. And so when he was made and, continued the same voice and the same attitudes, well, some of the same attitudes.
Not
Not quite as much
hanky
No.
panky,
Of the hanky panky and the TARDIS, but a little.
Well, not
some,
that they showed, yeah.
Some, yeah. So I was delighted, and then it was great to. I was Justin very kindly kept asking, and I kept saying yes, at least until after Sting of the Zygons, the BBC had worked out. Hold on a minute. Historically, we've always offered a royalty on Doctor Who books. And it was fine in the old days when they weren't earning out and we didn't have to pay the authors any extra money. But when Doctor Who was that popular, of course, the royalties were worth a good amount.
A lot more.
Yeah, a very good amount. And I'm surprised it took them as many books as it did before they said, hang on, these people will write these books even if we don't give them all that extra money. And of course they did. But they didn't change the amount of the advance to compensate. Yeah. So I felt, especially as they were lovely books to do, but they weren't advancing my career at that point because I was very busy doing the children's stuff. So I felt, well, it's kind of unfair, I think, to have to do it for so much less money. Not that it's ever been just about the money, because clearly it all tied in, I suppose, to me sort of taking that grade cut and that pay cut right back at the beginning to go and work on Doctor Who. It felt like they were asking me to do it again, but this time with absolutely no benefit at all to me. So so I think it probably just sort of like kicked in at that point. And while I was lucky enough to get to write an audio for the Matt Smith Doctor right at the beginning, which was good. So at least I kept my hand in. And I was sad not to write for Capaldi's Doctor, which is why when it came to do Star Tales, I sort of structured my Houdini one to kick off with Capaldi, meeting him, and then Jodie's Doctor coming back and finishing that business. So I was able to have written for all the new series Doctors. So that was cool.
It's a good thing to have on your CV, that's for sure.
My personal CV, yes.
Yeah. Of course, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
So did we have a question conflict there? Did we? It happens.
Mine was about Ring of Steel.
Oh, right. Okay, we'll come back to that. Because I just wanted to ask, and you can tell me if I'm being an idiot here, but I don't think you've written for any of the previous Doctors, or have you?
What, the past Doctors?
The past Doctors, yeah.
I don't think I've written whole novels for them, but I've written short stories for a fair few.
Yeah. Because one of the things I like, I was looking at Alistair Reynolds' book and Stephen Baxter's book. Now, those sort of sci-fi writers coming in and writing a Doctor Who story. And one of the things that I've always enjoyed about your particular novels, Steve, is they have a lot of that really grand sci-fi kind of element to them. Because I remember the first one of yours I read, reading back to the Eighth Doctor Adventures, I think it was that Parallel 59 actually, and it struck me as, and don't take this the wrong way, right? I mean it in a good way, but kind of like an Andy McNab novel, but sci-fi, right? In that, I mean, all the military hardware has a sort of solid feel to it. There's serial numbers, there's gauges on the ammunition, that sort of thing. It gives it a kind of reality, and I kind of like that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, I do too. I think that's probably when I ended up doing the Young Bond books, I was able to take some of that.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about those.
That Ian Fleming, precision and getting into the detail of it to just to add an element to it all. Yeah, I've always enjoyed that kind of thing.
That's it. So the thing with Reynolds and Baxter there, what they do is they kind of apply that retrospectively to some of the older Doctors. So I think they're the second and third Doctors respectively, aren't they? So would you consider doing such a thing yourself? Would you pitch it? Would you decide it was a good idea to do, or is it like, do you know what? Nah. We don't do that anymore. The whole Doctor Who book thing now is we're back in Target novels, and that's the end of it.
Oh, I don't know. I think there's always something new to do. I mean, getting Tom Baker to write the Fourth Doctor, I think was a fantastic coup.
Absolutely,
it was brilliant to actually get to do that. And if we could find a way of presenting a past Doctor in a way that was fresh and new and exciting, using a particular writer perhaps, that would be very cool. But I think it needs a decent handle to hang it up on, to earn its place. I think every Doctor Who book, when you've had so many, every new Doctor Who book has to come out and add and bring the requisite joy to as many people as possible. I would love to see more old Doctors doing stuff. That was, for me, it was part of the fun of doing things like the Target storybook and getting Colin Baker to write for his Doctor, getting Matthew Waterhouse to write for Adric. It was very exciting to go back and actually get the actors' perspective on some of their characters.
Well, and of course, we had Sophie's novel, didn't we?
Yeah, let's talk about that now. And I had another question, so I must come back to that. But we spoke to Sophie a little while ago, didn't we, Paul? And we turned the podcast into a mini quiz show for that one, didn't we? The corners to corners.
It was like a dream come true, Steve. It was. That's what it was like for me.
I'm not joking.
I've always wanted to meet Sophie.
Paul had a sparkly gold jacket.
I did have the jacket on. Yeah,
he said,
sweating.
He said, don't judge me, he said, and he disappeared under the table, and I thought, oh my God, what is he doing? And he came out in a sparkly gold jacket and his quiz show voice.
I did. But we don't record the video on this, do we?
No, so the world has missed out on this, unfortunately. But At Childhood's End was just, it was great. That we're big fans of that, aren't we, Jeff? Yeah,
we love that
big fans, yeah. So tell us about that, Steve, and how that all came about, and what it was like working on that. And
well, we wanted to... as I recall, I was just trying to think, how did that start? I mean, I've got the poster of the cover on my wall there, not that you can see. And your
good. So Sophie very kindly signed my cover sleeve after we chatted. Nice. I sent it over and got it signed, which is really nice.
I think we were looking to think of after doing Scratchman, doing Tom, thinking who would be good to do this. It had to be someone who wanted to be writing, and Mike Tucker, of course, had worked with Sophie on the Ace book back in the 90s. And I had worked with Sophie several times. The very first Short Trips collection we did at the BBC, I got her and Nick Courtney to read. So you've got Ace and the Brigadier reading all the stories out. That was cool. And I would see Sophie at conventions and catch up. She was always very friendly. We always got along well. And so we asked her if she would be interested, because, of course, it's like Ace was there at the end of the classic series and really passes the baton on to the modern companions, and we thought that it would be quite interesting to have, because the Seventh Doctor was so different from Jodie's interpretation, of. Or was it? That was what we. That's why we wanted to go. Because we go from this arch manipulator to this Doctor that wears their heart on their sleeve. And so how would Sophie get along? And so many stories have been written about Ace and what happened to her and how she ended up. She's been killed. She's been blown to bits. She's been sort of like sent across the galaxy to become a tough space mercenary, or she's just gone back home or she's training on Gallifrey, or she's actually just running a multinational corporation on Earth. So you pay your money, you take your choice. Really, I mean, it's an infinite multiverse of possibilities. But we sat down with Ace. I remember sitting down with her in a chocolate shop in Wendover. And as you do,
because why not?
Because you can have a hot chocolate, and they give you little chocolates on a tray. And was saying, what would you like to do if you could bring Sophie back? What would she bring Ace back? What would she be doing? And it all grew from those discussions. And I was going to get just Mike to work with her, but then he became busier, and so I thought, what? Because I'd helped sort of work out the storyline. I thought it makes sense for me to help Sophie and Mike together. So between us all, we had a lot of fun working quite closely on it, and then a very very jolly time when it was all finished. So it was good stuff, and we enjoyed that a lot. As so was the Alex Kingston book as well. Of course, that was wonderful working with Riversong. As well, thank God for lockdown, really, because she had the opportunity to. So many people got the chance to actually write as they'd always dreamed of writing.
So I've just thought of another question, but I was just going to say, after reading At Childhood's End, and now of course Sophie is coming back to the show in in a couple of months, which is very, very exciting. And she said that she's written something else which is coming out September time, is it? So my question is, are there any plans for any other show alumni to write that you know of?
Well, stay tuned.
You can use code to not tell us.
I don't know. I would hope so. I would hope there would be, but there's you really have to wait and see. There are, we've had some offers and they've been lovely offers, but it needs to kind of work with what the show is doing. So we'll, and what the general approach to everything is, and obviously it's a time now, very exciting time with the change of producers and the 60th coming up hot on the heels of the BBC centenary. So there's all sorts going on, but who knows? You shall have to. Maybe I'll come back. One day I shall get back, and I shall tell you.
I shall come back.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Well,
Until then, there must be no.
Like
no regrets.
That sounds like a good promise to us. Okay. So tell us a bit about Time Lord Victorious. So that was
God,
that was
so
an
much,
epic, wasn't it?
That was an epic.
Say again.
That was an epic. I just sorry, there's been so much, hasn't there? So much Doctor Who stuff.
It's been huge, isn't it? Because I guess something like Doctor Who, with all the different spin-off media, it just gives it a new. There's a new energy coming along every couple of years or so, isn't it? There's always something to kind of tap into, to change, to run along with, to move with. So
yeah, it's very true. Time Lord Victorious. The notion was pitched to BBC Books, and Albert and I were considering what to do, and we decided we would do 2 novels to tie in with it, and we felt that the novels actually got some quite juicy stuff to do. We kind of slightly kicked it off and slightly closed it off as well.
The villain in there was so good. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce the name. I'll leave that up to you, Steve.
I remember Jeff texted me very, very excitedly when he started reading that book. You were really taken by it.
Was that the Couture?
Yeah.
Is that
yeah.
Couture? There might be a Cotterer for all I know, but
yeah,
I'm sure. Let's ask Rose. Rose will tell her. Yeah, she'll tell us how they're saying.
Maybe one day they'll get referenced in the show, and you'll be. We should. But they were a brilliant creation, I thought.
They were, and I can't take any credit for those other than I was lucky enough to get to bring them to life. But James James Goss and the team at BBC Studios put together Brian the Ood and the Cotterer and the idea of the Dark Times as a means of proliferating stories, and I basically. It's one thing having a race that go around shortening or determining lifespans for all the creatures in the universe, but then sort of like turning that into a story and actually looking at how they do it. That was where the challenge lay, and that was what I was able to do with some of that book. I mean, the first draft of it was very different and frankly not that great. So it needed a lot of editing. So I think James had a vision of it in his head, and I'd had another vision, but actually he
quite different.
Exactly, and he'd been working across the other media and kind of knew he wanted to simplify certain aspects or like preserve other bits of it. So went through and changed quite a lot of that, and then it was a very collaborative approach again with Una's All Flesh is Grass.
Yeah.
Which obviously took the story onwards from the big cliffhanger at the end of
the 2 books were sort of the I always felt that they were the main chunk of the whole Time Lord Victorious story, weren't they? And
they were the
other
essential
stuff,
bits you had to read.
That was it. Yeah, if you were going to get involved, you had to read those, and then the audios with 8, for example, were connected to it, but you could get the kind of crux of it in the 2 books. I thought.
It was a challenge to try and get across stuff of the 8th Doctor and one of those interludes without giving away where they were, what was happening, how much he knew of anything. Yeah. So it's one of those. Yeah, you're always sort of like jumping through a few hoops to try and preserve the timey-wiminess of it.
Yeah,
but
it was
been
good.
Quite a challenge though.
Yeah.
It was.
I
Again,
mean, across all the different media, making sure the story's at least kind of sort of tied in.
Yeah, it was. It must have driven James to.
Yeah, he probably felt like he felt like Kevin Feige for a while, you know.
Yeah, I imagine so. Yeah,
interconnected stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
Were you sort of privy to each other's stories then? Did you kind of know where everyone else was going with their stuff?
To a degree, and as much as I needed to know to do mine, you know, I think I was shown Simon Guerrier wrote a short story with the Cottura and the Ainley Master, I think, for something Big Finish related, and I was shown that before I started to get a steer on how he was presenting them. But you know, that was at a very different stage in their timeline, I think, and so I was able to do a bit of different stuff with it and actually go right into their origins, so to speak. So yeah, it was good. It was written during the first lockdown, so I think I had a bit of extra time to lose myself in its labyrinthine madness, and just about make it out the other side. It was.
I did Time Fracture earlier in the year, and Brian Nude is in there, isn't he?
Yes.
So that was quite fun.
Yes,
seeing him.
I did Time Fracture with James. Actually, it was great because James was able to tip me off where to stand to get a special thing to happen.
Oh,
so I had like an inside
knowledge.
Yeah, it was very good. It was very good. I was very grateful for that.
It was really good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really good fun.
We obviously need to tap up James Goss, Jeff. That's what we need.
Yes, yeah, we'll have a word. Yeah. I went with my wife. She's not into Doctor Who. We're still married, wife, and
congratulations.
Yeah, and we went to Time Fracture, and there's a bit where a lady's trying to sell you tickets to go on an intergalactic cruise and stuff, and then the Gallifrey agent comes in. There's a fight with a pig alien, and then a Cyberman comes in, and everyone's got to flee. And my wife ended up running up a ramp to get away, and she turned around thinking I was behind her, but there was a Cyberman coming at her with its arms out. She said actually she just shit herself for a moment, and then we had to get out of the room as it was still going around. It was so well done. It was really good.
I thought you were going to say she went home with the Cyberman after all that. Yeah. So where's she gone? We've been waiting for you.
That would have been a way to end it, wouldn't it?
Yeah. She left. That's a Sun headline, isn't it? She left me for a Cyberman.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed Time Lord Victorious. What was the sort of putting 10 at the front of it? Was there any sort of particular reason behind that, or rather than another Doctor?
I think it was. I was surprised that it wasn't sort of like Jodie leading it all, but I think they wanted to just to leave the Jodie era sort of separate and in television, so to speak, rather than to pitch her against other Doctors at that time. I think they wanted to perhaps keep her with they were kind of bringing in new Doctors and rocking our worlds in terms of the Doctor's origins. So I think it was really to make it a kind of the earlier TV Doctors. So I think 10 because obviously such a hugely popular character, and bring in 8 and 9. So you got 8, 9, 10. Why not? Yeah. Give McGann a bit more to do and utilise him on Big Finish and and have some fun with Eccleston's version. Obviously before he came back to the part. Yes. It was a way of extending his reach. So it was. Well,
I remember his announcement of returning to or coming to Big Finish. It kind of coincided with some of Time Lord Victorious, and I remember at the time thinking, I wonder if he's actually gonna do an audio or something for it. There was a bit of talk about that at the time, but obviously Big Finish and BBC Books is kind of separate stuff, so it didn't happen. But it was it was exciting to think maybe, and then obviously his glorious Big Finish return. We've got some more questions here, Stephen. I've got another Doctor Who one to come back to in a bit, but let's talk a bit about Astrosaurs.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Let's talk about Astrosaurs. Why not? I remember that was I think I was starting work on that around the same time as starting Monsters Inside. In fact,
Yeah.
so I remember. I think I mentioned it to Russell when we were that in terms of other stuff that we had on. Astrosaurs was a while ago. I think 2004. I think I wrote the first titles in that series, and that was the series that kind of launched me on my career as writing my own fiction and not for other people's characters, because I was still doing quite a lot of editorial stuff. I was still writing essential guides to Shrek or Thunderbirds annuals and things like that, and enjoying myself very much. But I'd written Astrosaurs as a bit of a placeholder because I'd had some. I saw myself as being this like boldly original young adult author, and wrote my boldly original sample chapters of my boldly original young adult novel and had them boldly and unoriginally turned down. But with lots of positive noises that we'd very much like to see. Yeah, we'd like to see the next thing. And my agent said, I think you'll have to write the whole thing next time, because it would have been, if you had written it, or people would have seen what you had planned for it rather than that. And I said, well, how am I can't really take the time to do an entire novel and then risk it not selling. So I wrote something shorter based on an idea that I'd had since I wrote some books about walking with dinosaurs some years before, and sent that off just to remind people that I was out there. And to my amazement, that was the one that sort of took off. There were 3 publishers wanting to turn that into a series of books. I couldn't believe it.
Oh wow!
So went with Random House because I think they were offering 4 titles and the others were offering 3. And that led to the start of a long partnership with them. We did 22 Astrosaurs and 12 Cows in Action books and 8 Slime Squads and 8 Astrosaurs Academies, the prequel series. Oh yeah, there was all going on.
Cyber Poos and all that kind
absolutely, of thing. Absolutely, yeah. Z-Rex and stuff. And you can see in some of those early Astrosaurs, I think I wrote one called The Seas of Doom. How close can you get to the old
it's a typo.
It's got to be done.
And
escape into terror.
Yeah, well, that sort of thing. I think chapter 1 is like The Nightmare Begins or something, so it's really sort of going through my all the Doctor Who stuff and putting in little sneaky references when you can.
So is it still going, the series?
No, I stopped it quite a while ago.
Right.
When you get to, you've done 22 of them, and then we did the crossover with Astrosaurs and Cows in Action, it reaches a point where, you don't want to start repeating yourself, and 22 is probably enough for anyone to be getting on with. Although, looking back, the fact I'm still very proud that, most of them are still in print, 17 years later. It's pretty cool. Maybe one day, who knows. But the thing is, as a writer of original fiction, of course, you have to reinvent your job periodically. You have to basically keep doing the same thing without ever repeating yourself. So you have to kind of
and hope that nobody notices.
Yeah, that's right. So you have to just keep pushing yourself into different areas, different genres and styles, and see what happens. But I've always
you've
got
done
a very
that
soft spot.
Quite recently by taking up the mantle of young James Bond, haven't you? I mean,
yes.
Look at the way we've just flown into that. It's like we
What a
scripted
segue.
this.
Yeah, that was
yeah.
beautiful.
What a segue. Yeah. So, you're a Bond fan, aren't you, Paul?
Oh man, yeah. I love my James Bond, but bizarrely, I only recently came across the young James Bond series, and I started. I have to admit, I haven't read any of yours yet, Steve. I'm reading them sequentially, and I'm
starting
just
with Higson,
the Charlie Higson ones. Yeah, but
I was just going to say, I remember seeing one years ago, and it's a Charlie Higson on it. And I thought the guy from the Fast Show. Nice.
Oh, Charlie Higson wrote loads. He's wrote loads
but he
stuff.
has.
Freya reads, and she's been reading the zombie ones, the
Enemy?
Apocalypse.
Yeah.
The Enemy, that's it. She read all of those. It's taken about 3
brilliant.
years to get through them all. But I was kind of reading them with her. We were sort of reading them to each other. And I had the same thing as you, Jeff. It's like Charlie Higson, the Fast Show.
Yeah.
Actually, he never did that one, did he? He did the other stuff. But, it's cracking, right? And as a big James Bond fan. So getting to the point of it, right? So I was in the pub with a journalist friend of mine who is also a massive, massive James Bond fan, bigger even James Bond fan than I am. He knows everything about everything and puts me to shame. But his argument was that the Steve Cole books are actually far better than the Charlie Higson books. He was saying, I said, really? And I tried to go with it. I said, because I knew your name, Steve, having been a Doctor Who fan for years and years, but I didn't want to admit to my journalist friend that I wasn't even aware at that moment that you'd written any of the young James Bond books, I felt deeply ashamed about. But
I think your friend was just trying to be controversial, you know. I don't think he really meant it.
He does tend to do that a lot, but you know, it's. I don't think we kind of hit on why exactly, but
damn, you could have told me.
Certainly, you know. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
No, it was
right.
it was great.
How did that come about then?
It came about because I was asked. I remember December 2012. The phone went, and my agent said, "How would you like to, be the writer of The Adventures of Young James Bond?" And I said, "I think someone's already doing that, aren't they?" Because I knew Charlie had been writing them, and I knew they were very good. I'd read a couple of them, and it turned out that Charlie hadn't written any for quite a while. His last one was 2005 or something. It was a long time ago.
A while back,
and they were looking to redo the series. Random House were doing it, and would I be interested in trying out for it? So I'd written a couple of books called Tripwire, which is about a teenage bomb disposal expert that I written with Major Chris Hunter, who was had been a bomb disposal expert all around the world, won the Elizabeth Medal. It was a very interesting guy to work with, and was like the real life James Bond. He was always doing things like climbing down from helicopters over the ocean and swimming across and liberating hostages and stuff. That was kind of like all of the day's work.
That's how I get to work every day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. It's the same old thing.
Just do it for a laugh on a Sunday morning.
Yeah,
that's right. So I think they saw that and they realised I could write the action stuff, and and I went along to meet the good people at Ian Fleming Publications and discuss my approach. It was always going to be a series of 4 books, so I was asked right at the beginning to have a story arc that would cover those 4 titles.
Oh, okay.
So it was kind of conceived as a limited edition, and so I had my plan and wrote up some sample chapters, and then I was invited to meet the wider Fleming family at their private bank in Piccadilly, and we sat round the table with drinks, and I felt that if I said the wrong thing, they'd press a button in the middle, and the chair would tip back into the piranha tank.
I'm very badly burnt.
That's right.
Legs are broken.
The mutated sea bass with laser beams for their eyes.
Freaking sharks with laser beams.
No. It's gonna be deadly oysters.
It's the clam creature from the caves back to get me again. So they liked where I was coming from with it, and and we did the 4 books, and it was great fun to do. Lovely to add my own footnote to a character like Bond, to have written officially for Bond, and be able to take some of the scraps and little bits of evidence from Fleming's own novels of James's childhood. Things that he remembered of being a boy, you could actually then write happening to the boy as it was going along. Because obviously, normally with a character, you know their past, but you don't know where they're going. But with this, it's the opposite.
It's the reverse, isn't it?
Exactly. You know what he's going to turn into, and so the poor bastard is going to go through some horrible stuff to be able to.
But that's part of the fun of writing it, though.
Exactly.
Or reading it, rather. So
being able to come up with
these
that
little
stuff.
clues in.
Yeah, and you can basically say, what happened to make you able to switch off your moral compass to the point where you will kill people for your income, and that's acceptable to murder someone as long as it's done professionally. It's quite an extraordinary thing when we think of Bond as a hero, but he does kill a lot of people.
He certainly does. There's a high body count.
Yeah, we start to think of the consequences. I think that's what. We were referencing Austin Powers earlier, but I think that obviously that's occurred to Mike Myers as well in terms of no one ever thinks about the family of a henchman, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's also
they get that phone call, don't they, in the first film?
Yeah, that's right. In the bar at the stag do or whatever, and it's just been flattened by a land roller or something.
Yeah,
but it's interesting then to obviously because you're doing it Fleming style, so everything's much more real and. The third book, I felt able to get a bit more fantasy, and that's my Bond steampunk novel, with a kind of a 30s version of the Iron Man suit gets in. We start creeping into the realms of extreme possibilities. But then again, my argument is that Fleming was doing sort of like similar stuff with all the voodoo stuff you get in Live and Let Die, and you get the and the idea that predestination is a thing, and also, some of the plot elements of On Her Majesty's Secret Service are like an episode of The Avengers in terms of the slightly surreal sort of fantasy overtones. So I felt, it was good getting to grapple with Bond. Very different from Doctor Who, in as much as Doctor Who's sandpit is a very, very wide place full of many sands and many toys, whereas James Bond inhabits his own particular world, and you have to treat him with the right style and the right care, he's very preciously guarded, so you need to be very true with him.
We had a question from one of our Twitter followers, John Porter at JS Porter 1966, who wrote in to ask, how did you find writing young James Bond? Were there any restrictions? So aside from what we just talked about, were there anything that you weren't allowed to write about? Did they want to see your manuscripts and make loads of changes to it before they sent it to the publishers?
Of course, because I was actually contracted by Ian Fleming Publications, who then sold the book on to Random House, or then Penguin Random House, when Penguin took over just before we even started with the first book. So, obviously I wouldn't have decided to set it in the 80s instead, because this is a Bond that's tying into Ian Fleming's novels. Bond. So, and he has to be a certain age in the 50s and the 60s, because the novels, of course, were contemporaneous. And so it was really kind of like following on. So it wasn't like I was looking to reinvent the wheel. I knew I was getting him when he went to Fettes College, but I didn't want to start off in the way that Charlie's has started off, with him going to Eton. It would be very difficult to start him off at Fettes without repeating that. So I made the first two stories take place over the summer holidays, and then actually have him fairly well settled into Fettes College by the time of the third book. And that was all, I kind of ran it past IFP and the board throughout. So yes, they would approve the storylines, and they would make changes, and they would request certain things were taken out. And I was happy complying with them, because I understand the strictures of working with licensed characters. And you, through those, through that tight governance, it pushes your creativity a little harder to make sure that it's as different as it could be. There's a character in the fourth book I did called Mimic, and Mimic, I was desperate to get him into a young Bond story. He starts off being there in Heads You Die, but then I completely redrafted that, and then he was going to turn up in Strike Lightning, but there wasn't really enough for him to do. So eventually, in Red Nemesis, Mimic gets his chance, and so I made no secret of the fact that I wanted to get Mimic into a book, and I think the Flemings were quite happy for him to get there too. So we would. It was like a two-way thing, really. We'd talk about plans, and then we'd always have a nice little party or celebration at the end of each book, and think about what we'd be doing next, in line with that original story arc, which didn't really change too much over the four titles. I think as my confidence grew, I enjoyed it more. It was quite nerve-wracking writing the first one, Shoot to Kill.
Yeah, was it? Yeah.
Because just like Doctor Who, Bond fans are not backwards and coming forwards to tell you if they liked or didn't like something.
Quite particular about
it. And rightly so. We all like any fan of anything has strong opinions, or they wouldn't be fans. So, and you're not going to please everyone, and also you've got big shoes to fill. But then at the same time, I was asked to write them because I would bring inevitably some sort of Steve Coleness to it. I mean, originally I was saying, how much of Charlie am I bringing to it? How much of Ian Fleming am I bringing to it? And my editor said, well, we've asked you to write it, so could you bring some of yourself to it, please? And
do your thing.
Just interpret. So that became easier with time. And I just... you can only do your own take on it, really, and
absolutely,
and hope it goes okay. So I've been very lucky to get to work on such giants of popular culture as Doctor Who and Bond, and
well, they are almost like the two the biggest 20th and 21st century kind of iconic cultural landmarks, aren't they? They started. I mean, in James Bond cinema started around about the same sort of time as Doctor Who on TV,
And I found out that in the script for Thunderball there was even a Dalek reference that was taken out. I
think I'd heard that.
They
was
actually
in Doctor Who magazine or something.
I don't know. I was looking at a little video online that was listing it, but it was essentially Bond sort of like summoned to this bigwig meeting, saying, why is everyone here? And I think he said something like, the Daleks have invaded or something, sort of satirically. And I think Connery actually spoke the line, and they redubbed it later on, like someone's lost their dog or something, because they were worried about not make American audiences being confused by this Dalek reference, because Doctor Who hadn't been out there yet. But I think it's fascinating that Doctor Who obviously took so much from the Bond movies, and Bond as a character. It would have been quite amusing for Bond to have taken just that tiny little line.
You think so? You got Bond mania, Beatlemania, and Dalek mania all kind of happening around the same sort of time. And
for sure.
Imagine the box office if you combined all that into one.
It'd be like a giant oyster.
An oyster of joy.
Oh dear.
Full of many pearls. It would have been wonderful.
Indeed.
So we've got a question here from @QueerThazzy on Twitter, and they're asking for an insight into your writing process and perhaps some funny or memorable moments from throughout your career as well.
Well, there was that time a bee flew in through the window, and
Actually,
another time
we had a good one with the Tom story earlier, didn't we? So.
Yes, exactly. There was that time I got a paper cut, but we won't go into that. That was terrible.
That's the thing with writing; it's quite an isolated, lonely sort of profession.
It can be. It can be, yeah. But it's always nice when you can kind of like work with people a bit, and Justin and I would meet up sometimes and sort of like meet in pubs and write together when we were up against it. With Combat Magics, I remember quite often my process involves starting off very slowly and miserably, and then slowly speeding up until by the end I'm sort of like racing along because the deadline is finally sort of breathing down my neck and I've got to finish the damn thing. And so what I would do with the Bond books, without fail, and it wasn't ever planned that way, but it would always happen. I would end up having to. The last 24 hours was, just ridiculously intense. Yeah, so I just didn't sleep at all. I would wake up at 9 o'clock and I would write through the day, breaking for meals, and I'd write through the evening, and then I would write through the entire night. And then the sun would come up again and I was still writing, and I would have to keep writing until I got to about midday, and I'd written 8 to 10 to 12,000 words and the entire ending of the book, and then I would send it off and crash and just, and that would be it. But actually having that focus, you felt like you were living those the finale with Bond, because the adrenaline was going and you were like writing it, and you were
so it energizes the writing.
It does.
Writing in real time for the attention.
Pretty much. It was extraordinary. But with Shoot to Kill, I think I'd had quite a few very, very late nights with it, and I remember that's the only time I've actually started writing in my sleep. I've fallen asleep in my chair. I was writing.
No, Steve!
I know. Only for a sort of few seconds. I'd wake up and I'd find that I'd written this line, and there was a bit at the end of
with your forehead.
So just like repeated full stop.
It was weird. It was actually there it was. The words were there. It's just only the mind behind it just drifted off, and there's a character in Shoot to Kill, the bad guy is kind of this big voyeur, I think wears gloves, bit of a Harrison Chase type.
Yeah,
He doesn't want to,
yeah.
you know, keeps the world through a lens one step removed. And I just suddenly, in my sleep, I wrote this bit where he pulled off his leather glove to reveal beautifully manicured, painted nails that he then used to claw James's neck with. I think I wrote about 3 or 4 lines, and then there was this moment where I was thinking, hey, that's brilliant.
That's
and
good.
then I suddenly thought,
yeah.
no, it's not. It's crap. It's rubbish. It's like not true to the character at all. It's ridiculous. And sort of deleting it and sort of carrying on doing something more proper. But with Combat Magics being about 2017, I probably wrote that.
Yeah.
And I was tired. It being again trying to write it in time. It'd been a lot of late nights. And there was this massive thunderstorm happening outside as I was writing the climactic scenes of Combat Magics, going over word length, as I always do. I always end up writing too much and having to cut back. But you know that helps keep it taut. You never have to pad it out. It's always having to chop back. But I think I got to about 4:30 in the morning, and I thought, you know what, I'm not even going to write anymore tonight because I'm just really bloody tired. And I think I'll just go and watch the lightning instead. And so I just put down the laptop and stood at the door and stared out at the rain and the lightning and the thunder and thought, yeah, this is quite cool actually being up at this time and seeing this when everyone else is asleep. And then about 5 minutes later, I was asleep as well on the sofa. And I finished the rest, I think, the next morning before just the last chapter. I just had to do the clearing up chapter. So that was the last thing I did once I'd gone through and read it all. So not a fascinating story. Person who asked the question, I'm sorry, but that was how it was. But she did mention, I think, Bitten Mane, Attila the Hun's horse, and
favourite character.
Yeah, and I liked Bitten Mane as well. I thought I was pleased with his name. I quite liked that. And I was pleased with his role.
Spin-off material.
Yeah, sure. I think the horses of Doctor Who is a neglected area. But if you think about it, got that horse in the Reign of Terror, that does a lovely job.
Yeah,
you got
the one on the Girl in the
Fireplace. You got the Sontaran on a horse. In Flux.
Because he just wants to ride a horse. Yeah. I love that.
So maybe
if
this little kind of if all the horses of Doctor Who sort of got together and had an adventure, I think that would be really cool. Bitten Mane could sort of lead them because it's got clearly
you could call the book, and I'll let you have this for free. You could call it Horse Tales.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say Dr. Horse or something for a second.
Doctor Who Horse.
Horse, exactly.
See, this is why we do what we do.
Yeah.
You do what you do.
I think horse tales sounds good for me. Every adventure starts off with someone saying, "Why the long face?" and, a horse, I got a long face, etc. Yeah, that's the one. Well, we have.
So what are you working on next, Steve?
I've been working with Wilbur Smith, the thriller writer.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yep, up to his sad death late last year. Working with him and an author called Keith Chapman, who actually created Bob the Builder. We've been working together on a trilogy for Wilbur Smith. I've been working with Tim Peake, the astronaut, writing some fiction with him. That's been very cool, very exciting.
He had one book out, didn't he? I went to see him talk last year in Brighton with my wife.
Didn't you?
Yeah,
she's a big Tim Peake fan.
I saw it in Oxford. Yeah, that was a good show. Yeah. It's called Swarm Rising, the first one, and Swarm Enemy comes out in 2 days' time. In fact.
Oh right! Oh, great! My son has been reading the first one, so I have to get the second one.
Jeff, perfect time.
Yeah, just in time for the summer holidays. Perfect.
Yeah. Exactly. It's almost like planned this stuff.
Amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That is some scheduling you did there.
Who needs Graham Norton? Just come onto the Who C2C podcast if you want anything plugged.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you probably won't put this out now for another because it's already over an hour and a half long. You probably have to put it out.
Oh yeah, it's going to be Christmas.
Cut it down to 10
next year. Yeah,
next year. In which case, I'll say, we've already done another 17 books. It's great. It's a wonderful success.
So I've just got one more question because we've probably taken up enough of your time. But
it is an hour and a half, isn't it?
Yeah,
this is one of the longest ones we've done.
But it's flown by nicely.
We're all changed.
It's good. So, if you could write for any Doctor now, who would it be? If BBC Books said, Steve, free, blank page, go for it.
Question,
it's
Jeff.
a good question. I
like that one.
And what would happen in it as well?
Oh, it's a mean question in many ways, because obviously
He does that, Steve.
Yeah.
He just pulls them out like that. He weaponises questions.
I don't know. I mean, I do genuinely love writing for all of them. If I was to write for one now, I'd like to. I kind of feel like I'm not quite done with Jodie. I'd like to do another Jodie story. Really enjoy.
Rules up for more Jodie stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely more 13.
And I'd love to write something for Shooty's Doctor at some point. I mean, that would be really exciting as well, because it's so wonderful the way the show always looks forward, even as it flirts with its past, and I've always loved that about the show, and I think it kind of sets a good example for all of us in life as well. Look forward, but flirt with your past, and sort of like take the best of what you've done with you, and have new adventures wherever possible. So I would say, we'll look to the future, and maybe someday I'll be lucky enough to write for a future incarnation. We'll see.
Well, yes, I hope so. Yeah,
Fantastic.
Future's bright. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Well, Steve, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure, talking
boys.
with you,
Thank you
and for our listeners, we hope you've enjoyed it as well. And we'll keep in touch with you online, and when you've got something new coming out, let us know, and we can tweet
Please
it out.
do.
I would love to. Thank you very much.
Tell everyone about it. Brilliant. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Steve Cole, everybody. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Hooray.